Hi, Albert here for ToolMoto. As promised, we always want to try to look at something cool whenever we get a chance. And today we're going to look at a 2015 Kawasaki Ninja H2. Now this is my personal bike. I've had this bike about 2 years now. I've only got about 1,300 miles on it, so I don't ride it just a whole lot. But I mostly bought this bike because, well, it's a pretty cool Kawasaki, and I'm a Kawasaki guy. And I think this is one of the most significant motorcycles that Kawasaki has probably ever built. They really, when they built the Ninja H2, they wanted to build a bike that would be the ultimate street bike. So it wasn't necessarily built to be a road racing bike. It wasn't built to be a drag racing bike. It was really built to be the ultimate street bike. And so what I thought we'd do is do a little walk around on it, and I'll show you some of the cool stuff about it and tell you a little bit more about it. Alright, so let's take a look at the 2015 Kawasaki Ninja H2. So one of the first things you'll notice about the H2 is the paint, the finish. So this is mirror coated black is what Kawasaki calls this, and it is a highly reflective chrome type finish. It is a painted finish. Looks a lot like black chrome, kind of a smoky tinted chrome. And my understanding is this was they do this process with a black base coat, and then they put down a layer of pure silver on it, and then it's clear coated. And so from that aspect, it's just as durable as any automotive finish, clear coated finish that we have out there today. So you basically can wax it and all of those things just like you would any other paint job. But because this is very highly reflective, any little flaws, any little scratches, scuffs, lint, this like what you see right here, this is just some lint on the bike, and so anything shows. So you just have to be really careful when you're cleaning on this bike. But it just has a really stunning look with that black chrome finish. You can see the green accents, it has a little green stripes. Aerodynamic bodywork was really designed to be as aerodynamic as possible. The little pieces here create some downforce, as well as just the shape of the fairing. One of the other things about this bike is this is the first time that Kawasaki has done a steel trellis frame, and so it has a very lightweight frame. So everything, the frame is painted green, so really easy for us to see what part of this bike is actually the frame. And so you can see the steering stem right up there, and then the green trellis frame. So a couple things also light. It uses the motor as a stressed member of the chassis, but also one of the things that Kawasaki liked about this frame was because you didn't have this big piece of aluminum here, it also helps heat evacuate out of the engine compartment there. And so steel trellis frame. Another first on this bike is the use of a single-sided swing arm. First time that Kawasaki has done a single-sided swing arm. Of course, there have been other single-sided swing arms before. And I don't know if the single-sided swing arm really is any higher performance or anything like that. It might even be heavier than a regular swing arm, but it definitely looks cool for sure. And I think that's probably a large reason why Kawasaki did that swing arm. And then, of course, the big news with this bike is the engine. These are rated at 200 horsepower, they're like 210, 215, something like that with the Ram Air. And they are supercharged. And let me grab my flashlight. They're supercharged, and so when Kawasaki wanted to build this supercharged motorcycle, now we have a supercharged jet ski from Kawasaki that uses an Eaton supercharger. When they were going to do this, they went to the supercharger manufacturers and said, told them what they wanted to do, and nobody really could commit to doing exactly what Kawasaki wanted. So Kawasaki went to their turbine division and developed their own supercharger. So this has Kawasaki's own in-house designed and manufactured supercharger. So what you're looking at back there, that red, is actually the supercharger. It's a centrifugal type supercharger, so it looks a lot, it's a round housing, kind of like a turbocharger might be, and only runs off of the engine. And I believe it has a chain, runs off maybe the back of the clutch basket there. But this tube here is the intake tube. It goes to the Ram air duct on the front of the fairing. So there's the Ram air duct. So air is forced in there under acceleration, comes down this tube, and then there's an air filter right in here, and then into the supercharger. And then if we come around this side, then you can kind of see, if you look right in there, that yellow with the hose clamps, orange rather, with the hose clamps, that is the outlet out of the supercharger and goes into the air box, which is underneath the gas tank, and then of course your throttle bodies and cylinder head there. So really short run from that supercharger to the engine. And so what Kawasaki wanted to do was get that air in the motor as quick as possible so that it had less time to heat up. And this supercharger, interesting enough, uses a set of planetary gears, and so that the shaft going right in here initially is turning at the same as crankshaft speed, and then the supercharger has some planetary gears that increases the speed of the supercharger to, I think it's 9.3 times crankshaft speed. And so if I think this bike redlines a little over 11,000 RPMs, but at 10,000 RPMs it would be doing 93,000 RPMs on the supercharger. So it really turns fast. They say it turns faster than the speed of sound, or has the ability to turn faster than the speed of sound. So really, really incredible. Builds a lot of boost there, moves a lot of air. 998 cc motor, 4-cylinder, dual overhead cam, 4-valve. They say that this motor, Kawasaki designed this motor at 1.5 to 2 times, to take 1.5 to 2 times the stresses of a normally naturally aspirated motor. So they really overbuilt this motor for this horsepower. 1.5 to 2 times it was upgraded, depending on the components in the area. It is a 6-speed transmission, has a hydraulic clutch, a hydraulic actuated clutch I should say, Brembo master cylinder, Brembo slave cylinder, and then the clutch over here. The clutch uses 10 discs, and it has fairly stiff clutch springs. Now starting with the 16 models, Kawasaki went to the FCC clutch. Now FCC is the name of the company that designed this style of clutch that they're using on the newer bikes, and it has a ramp system, and it acts as a assist as far as applying pressure to the clutch. Under acceleration it gets tighter, so because of that you need less springs. And then on decel, that ramp system kind of works in reverse and acts as a slipper clutch. And so they put that new FCC clutch on the 2016 and 2017 models. We don't know if they're going to make this bike for 2018 yet, but this clutch in this bike has a fairly heavy clutch pull, and it has 10 discs to give a lot of surface area, so it can handle all that horsepower. But you can upgrade these 15 model bikes to the later style clutch. I have actually ordered the clutch, and I've actually received it. I bought the clutch already, just have not put it in yet. But one of these days we'll make a video of getting the clutch installed on this bike. Now I've got the stock exhaust on this one. A lot of guys change exhaust. Brock's is real popular on these. Can either do at least a slip-on on them or a full system that he makes, as well as an ECU flash. And some of these guys are getting that horsepower stepped up to 240, 260, and with a few other mods even a little higher. So really can get a lot of potential to get horsepower out of these. But this bike is fast enough for me. I really don't find the stock exhaust to be all that offensive. It's very well made. The fit and finish on it is very, very good. And so for now, stock exhaust on this. Been putting that money into other things like some my Mustang supercharger build that we looked at. And so anyway, maybe someday there'll be some funds to change exhaust. But for now, I'm not offended by this one. I think it's just a really beautiful exhaust system. Of course, we talked about that single-side swing arm. You can kind of see here it's got 5 lug nuts that hold the wheel on. This gold that you see in the center here is the pit bull stand that stabs through the center. Normally that would be hollow through there. I have done a Yoshimura fender eliminator kit on this. Uses the OEM turn signals. It does have Brembo brakes front and rear, so you've got a twin piston Brembo caliper in the back, as well as I'm pretty sure it's a Brembo rotor. These are equipped with ABS, so anti-lock brakes, and it uses Kawasaki's KIBS, Kawasaki Intelligent Braking System, which is a very sophisticated ABS system. So a little different than if you've got a Ninja 300 or a 650 or something like that from Kawasaki with ABS. The system on this bike is more advanced. You're not going to get as much of that pump back in the pedal as you would with those other bikes. But your Brembo, I believe these are M50 model block, 4-piston calipers, radially mounted. Brembo brake rotors on the front. There you go. You can see the Brembo logo there. They call them a semi-floating rotor. So you can see this is an aluminum, this is a steel, and there's a rivet here, so there's a little bit of float between those two pieces. The front suspension on this from KYB, real sophisticated suspension, lots of adjustments. I mostly ride this bike on the street. I haven't messed with it a whole lot, but it has you'll notice the fork tube here is a black coating. They call that DLC, or diamond-like carbon coating. The headers on this bike are stainless steel, and they have kind of an oval shape there at the head, and then they come into a round. I think it's a 45 millimeter size tubing. Now you can see they're quite pretty with the heat. They've got some gold and purple and blue in them, and really looks great. The little exhaust chamber there. KYB rear shock as well, fully adjustable. So we talked about that steel trellis frame. One of the things I had heard on these bikes, the chassis being a stress member of that frame, if you had the engine out of this bike and you were to sit on it, you could possibly bend the frame. So pretty interesting there, unique deal. So if you ever have the motor out of your H2, don't sit on it. You might bend the frame. We'll try to avoid that. But let's see, what else? This is equipped with traction control as well as power modes and engine braking. And it also has a launch control on it. So it allows for full throttle launch. There's your radiator back there, nice big radiator. So I've got this sitting on my Pitbull headstand, and so I don't know if you can see, but that stand doesn't touch the bike anywhere but right in there at the steering stem, and so the just plugs into the steering stem, the hole in the bottom of the steering stand. So that's a pretty cool stand, just nice for cleaning. The reason I had this bike up on my lifts, I rode this bike a week ago, and I got caught in the rain, and I wouldn't have rode this bike if I'd have known I was going to get rained on, but got caught in a pretty good rain shower, and it just got it pretty dirty everywhere. So I've had it up on the lift, detailing it, cleaning it up, and just getting it looking good again. I really like to keep my bikes clean. I'm very picky about my wheels. I like for my wheels to just be super clean, as well as the rest of the bike too, but especially wheels and brakes and brake discs. I don't like to see any of that crud and stuff in there. These are also equipped with a quick shifter. This has a 6-speed transmission with a quick shifter, and so with the quick shifter it allows for clutchless on throttle upshifts. So you don't have to roll off the throttle, and you don't have to pull in the clutch to upshift on this bike. And on that quick shifter, it's just amazing to me how smooth it pulls and how fast you can shift this bike. Just almost a seamless acceleration. Just really is incredible. This does have a unique transmission. It is a cassette type transmission, which means you can access the transmission shafts by removing this clutch cover, removing the clutch, and maybe we'll be able to see that plate when we do that clutch upgrade on this. But this has a GP inspired transmission, so the input shaft on the transmission, all of the gears are fixed on that shaft, essentially made onto that shaft, and then the gears that are on the output shaft don't slide back and forth, move back and forth. They do rotate, but they're dog rings, and those dog rings move back and forth in there to engage those gears. So heavy duty GP style dog ring transmission. So you'll notice that this is a solo seat on there, so there's no rear seat, so no passengers on this one. These side bolsters on the side can adjust. They're in the forward position now, but they can move back, give you more room. I have plenty of room. If they move forward a little bit, I'd probably move them forward some more, kind of lock me in there a little better. And then you also know there's no passenger pegs either, because there's no passenger seat. A lot of people didn't bug them that there was not a belly pan of some kind on this bike. Doesn't bother me. I think the bike is just gorgeous just the way it is. Let's see, I did also add the Kawasaki accessory frame sliders to this bike. I normally don't do frame sliders on my personal sport bikes, just because I've seen them cause more damage than they've helped in some cases. But this bike, because of the expensive nature of the bodywork on this bike and the fact that the paint on this bike is impossible to touch up and probably very difficult to duplicate, I did add the Kawasaki accessory frame sliders to this one, as well as I changed the bar ends to a Throttle Meister bar end. So on the throttle side, that one you can use as a throttle lock, as a cruise control. And then I also did a phone mount and a USB charger for my Bluetooth headset. and then I added a tank pad to it. But otherwise, this bike is pretty well stocked. A little hard to see the instrumentation from up here, but it's got a analog tack and a digital readout on the speedometer, gear position. Also has some engine braking that you can set, electronic engine braking with the throttle control valves. You can close those to get some engine braking in certain circumstances. You can turn that on and off. This bike, as far as riding this bike, what's it like to ride this bike? The best way I can describe riding an Ninja H2 is it's not subtle at all. This bike is just in your face, raw horsepower. Now, so this bike is rated at 200 horsepower, and it's like 210, 215, something like that with the Ram Air. And there are a lot of bikes that are getting close to that kind of horsepower, 200 horsepower, that are not supercharged. But I think the big difference with this is that with this supercharged bike is the way that it builds power, and the torque that it builds is really just incredible. It really, really pulls hard. From 4,000 RPMs up, this bike just pulls like a freight train. It is absolutely incredible how hard that pulls. So this side is a Ram Air vent there, and then this side, you know, it's just kind of a dummy vent. Now the H2R model, they use they have Ram Air on both sides, and it kind of crosses over to this side, but the R model does not have the headlights. So they made two versions of this bike, the street version and the R model, that cost, I guess, twice as much as this bike. It made about 300 horsepower, was track use only, so it was not street legal. And that didn't do me a lot of good, so I wanted one that was street legal. Plus, this bike was expensive enough as it is. But so one of the things to maybe tell you about the headlight on this bike, it's a projector halogen headlight, and it kind of has a blue tint to it, the light. And so when you're riding this bike down the interstate, it kind of puts out a blue light, and that blue light reflects off the road signs. And I'm always looking over my shoulder because I think there's a police car behind me with his lights on. When I see that blue light reflecting off the signs, definitely causes me to check my mirrors pretty often on it. So let's see. You know, just a really cool bike. A lot of fun to ride. This bike's a handful to ride. I don't care who you are. If you get a handful of this bike, it is a lot of motorcycle to ride. It is extremely fast, pulls really hard, and it's really a lot of fun to ride just because it's exhilarating, and it's a little scary, which is part of the fun, I think. Alright, well, that's been a look at my Ninja H2. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. The more feedback I get from you, the more excited I get about making videos. Hey, thanks for watching.